Jménem Galerie architektury Brno, kabinetu architektury Escuela a architektury přivítal na přednášce který je polský architekt, o kterém hodně slyšíme a hodně uslyšíme. Jsem velice rád, že Jakub Szczesny se uvolil k přednášce na naší fakultě a chtěl bych vás pozvat 5 hodin na otevření výstavy Red House a jeho projekt, který proběhne 5 hodin v Galerii architektury. Nyní bych se dal slovo panu Szczesnému.
Hello. As Gabriel said, my name is Jakub Szczesny, and I have very bad news for you. It's highly unprofessional, but I got drunk about half an hour ago with just a sip of Moravian white wine. So like the wine you have here, and maybe it's me not sleeping well enough last night. Altogether, I'm going to be probably slightly unpredictable. So if I do anything that's strange, you know, it's basically because of your wine. Okay, so we have 1 hour. I'm going to go very fast. So we finish in half an hour, and then you can go home. To start with, I'm an architect from a platform called Centrala. It's where we call each other a project group, grupa projektowa in Polish. We started as a diploma group during our studies in a very lousy school of architecture, being the School of Architecture in Warsaw, in the Institute of Technology. It's maybe not the worst school you can get in this world, but probably not the best, especially in the 90s. So the main problem then was, and it still is, because I'm teaching there for some time, that you have professors having life contracts. You know what it means? It means that they're always feeling very well about being themselves. And no one will ever kick their asses off the faculty. So, and these guys were mostly stuck in deep 70s when it comes to perception of architecture. So, quite fast we understood that our non-acceptance of these people is actually a very good motivating element for us to work together. And against the will of our professors, we got to work together as a group during studies and doing diploma projects together, which was totally against the policy of the school, because the professors, what they were claiming, were not able to give us grades per person, because, as they said, they don't know who was working how much, and so on. But we, to use diplomatic word, we just ignored them. And we got good grades. And then after studies, we went to study and work with other places, also in frame of what we called at the time, and you probably know this very nice European program called Erasmus. So, actually, I have an Erasmus set of students in my office, and they all claim that there was a research done lately that about 2 million kids were born out of Erasmus program since beginning of 90s. It's possible. I did it in Barcelona. It was fantastic. But anyway, so what happened was that after some time of practicing and studying abroad, we came back to Warsaw in late 90s, and we realized that we hate the city. That the post-communist shadow was still there, and the new vicious, wild capitalism was something that we were not able to accept when it comes to architectural and urban production. That the technologies used, that the depth, or rather lack of depth, when it comes to urban consciousness of investors, of the neglecting its role bureaucrats, and the public that was ignoring everything, was something producing very bad a city. So we started by making a series of actions concentrating on urban scale and on objects. And the objects were coming mostly from post-war heritage of modernist architecture that was very much ignored or even mistreated, not only by the widely understood public, but also by architects that were our own professors, that were coming from the generation that was actually taught by these guys who designed these objects in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. So they were sort of having a complex of Oedipus, and many of them actually killing beautiful, sculptural, modernist objects and putting new, square meters of capitalist office. I'm not very lefty, but we were pretty much pissed off with this because we were ending up with something that looked like a very uniform, American downtown shitty place where you wouldn't be really interested in staying. So we started media actions. We were working with popular media, with normal people, and we were going outside of what is a normal architectural practice. Even though we were participating in tons of competitions, out of which a couple we won and built things, in most we were the first losers, being the second prize. You know this saying? Like the second best is the first loser, and this was our role mostly. But we liked that. I mean, this was a very stimulating, intellectually stimulating moment in our life, though we've been working 18 hours per day, and in some moments you just get tired of it. But to go into what happened in a period between 2006 and 2015, okay, I'll sit. A couple of things happened, and what happened is, altogether you can see it on our website. The website is here down. Is a number of projects that could be put in different series or leitmotifs, which is quite an interesting thing because you realize that actually life is a mechanism in which you get attracted by subjects, but also you attract subjects, themes, and motifs yourself. So this became an important mechanism, and we're going to start with one of the leitmotifs, which is revitalization. Areola light installation is an example of revitalization done in the backyard of VWA Gallery in Wrocław. The backyard is a typical murky shadow of public space. What we were very interested in this space, please. Sorry?
Where is this location of this installation?
It's in the back of VWA Design Gallery in Wrocław. It's by Świdnicka Street. Yeah. Totally in the center. Beautiful place. It's a fantastic place to take drugs and drink alcohol. I mean, it was up till we destroyed it with this. It was a murky shadow, as I said. And you have to know that there's this very interesting mechanism of, in most cases, best public spaces of the city that are producing like the backside. And the backside is usually a place where all kind of interesting things are happening. So the gallery director wanted to use the backside of the gallery and what is also the backside of the public space by doing openings there and probably even going out with exhibitions and so on. So she convinced the city of Wrocław to actually put money into revitalizing this space. So we worked with a landscape architect and we provided the lamp. The lamp is a sanctifying lamp, that's why it's called areola. Basically the idea is that there's a movement captor, so after when the dark falls, when you enter into the movement field, the areola enlightens itself above your head, so you cannot pee, drink, or take a shot in this place anymore because you're a saint. And it works. Another interesting thing is the mechanism of working on what we call the civic tradition. It's a mechanism, it's a PR mechanism in which when you start something that's like a social phenomenon, it becomes a tradition. So what happened was that one of the girls working in the gallery convinced her boyfriend to give her the, how do you call it, like the promise ring? Yeah, so he wanted to marry her. To give the ring under this ring, which he did, and it went into Facebook. And then suddenly people started doing the same thing. So this is how this mechanism of popularity of also an artistic or architectural, who knows, an object starts to work. Like another point here is that I'm not trying to say this is architectural or art. It's not for me to really describe it. Another element in the leitmotif here is the BMW actions related to urban farming projects that are basically changing the ex-factory of Norblin, which is probably the eldest factory in the city of Warsaw, that will be changed into a new residential project in next year, so temporarily changing it into urban farming project. The idea was that BMW has given us money to altogether 3 foundations to start a project in which we attracted all local players. It's in a very downtown of Warsaw, so we have all kinds of ministries, municipal institutions, schools, old people's culture houses, and so on. So we decided to address all these people and to give them, give these. So you have numbers of these. They're called like micro gardens. So we attributed to 90 micro gardens like this, different entities, individuals, foundations, ministries, and so on, saying like, guys, you come, you have your own carrots, basically. And this is what happened. So suddenly we had all these yuppies, people from ministries, coming in their ties, in the middle of summer, taking off their shoes, reading there, growing their broccoli, and this was fun. Apart from this, so you see, also there were all kind of workshops there, and like this is saying like this belongs to these 2 people, and so on and so on. So suddenly something very simple and a cheap move, because it was so cheap to do it, became a social phenomenon for half a year, and we're repeating it this year. The next project is related to Powiśle Station, a fantastic place to get drunk in Warsaw. It's probably one of the hippiest points in Warsaw, and it has one very good point for its owners. This giant canopy of a building designed by 2 fantastic railway architects who worked for Polish National Railway Company in the 60s and 70s, Piotr Szymaniak and Arseniusz Romanowicz. This fantastic point is that this giant canopy is producing a covered space that can be used as a place for consumption. And as it is a case of many railway-belonging buildings, most of them neglected and totally left over. So, like, this is the state in which 2 young and rich inheritors that made this bar, this is how it looked the moment when they overtook it. So the empty space belongs to no one. It doesn't belong to the railway company. It doesn't belong to the city. So it's a no one's land. And therefore the city is not getting any cash for the outdoor Biergarten that's happening there. Because normally they would pay tons of money. So it was a fantastic thing to do. And even though the interior, this is just a ticket booth, it's maybe 70 square meters. So we had to put the entire program of the bar and consumption space, as you can see here. We ended up having so little money that at the end of it we just bought IKEA stuff. But we changed the entire facade, which was not so easy because, of course, it's beautiful, very simple, sleek steel profiles from 60s are something that is against the law today because it doesn't fulfill any EU thermal norms. So it was a big deal to find profiles that would be maybe a bit less primitive than what you normally find on the market. And then the 2 rich guys that made this bar were so nice that they invited us, after the series of provocations in press that we started when it comes to the modernist heritage, to design the new bar there. But also they said, like, guys, why don't you do some programming there? We said, fantastic. So we started inviting art historians, architects, urban designers to have series of lectures. This is the director of Centrum Architectury, one of the most dynamic architecture foundations in Poland, who is giving a lecture on precisely on Constitution Square in Warsaw. So suddenly it became a place for people who are sentimentalistic towards communist past, and there were 30 at the time, more or less, my generation, or people who were interested in modernist heritage. And this is the case of many bars in Warsaw. In many cases, the design of a bar and the placement of the bar is related to the programming of it. And these are so-called culture bars, or culture cafes. It's a very strong phenomenon, and it's a fantastic thing for the owners, because suddenly you have people coming and drinking lots of vodka, spending lots of money on it, while listening to a lecture. This was the opening night, and this is how usually the place looks during the day. And then we were invited by the Museum of Modern Art in Warsaw to convert for half a year the space of furniture pavilion. It's actually a department store, 3-level high, a nice building from 60s, very simple functionalistic object, to turn it into a sports center. Because we did a series of projects, one of them is probably going to be built, that were a reaction towards developers wanting to put square meters of offices in places where people were actually using a public space and doing different urban sports, like skaters, parkour people, and so on and so on. So along with a foundation that's promoting urban sports, we said, okay, so let's just make this an urban sports center where people can do all kind of things, like gymnastics, all kind of, parkour jumping, and I don't know the name of it in English when you have this bottle closing element, you just knock on it. It's like races thing. So the entire thing worked during winter, and it worked very well, because winter was the time when kids after school, 1, 2 o'clock, could come and spend the rest of the evening doing all kind of things, and we had instructors there of all kind of sports. We had workshops and so on and so on. So again, as architects, we took a role, along with the foundation, with Modern Art Museum, a role of programmers. This is a revitalization project that I've started as a residency project in Australia. Did you ever hear about artists in residency projects? No. Okay, so I'm going to tell you this, don't tell anyone. As architects, we are pretty much stuck in one possible vision of being an architect, which means we call it S hours. So you come to your office, you take a sitting position, and you stay there for 10 hours. But in some moment we realize that this is not how we would like to spend our life. And even though we do a lot of sitting hours, we also decided to travel and do all kind of interventions in public spaces. Because public space, from Polish point of view, is something that we have regained through democracy, something that we didn't have during communism. Most of it were fake public spaces that were at best designed to host pro-communist manifestations. In some moment we started to be invited by different artists in residency programs. So if you Google artists in residency programs or places, you're going to see that there's a web of artists in residency places around the world where you can go. Sometimes you have to pay, sometimes you get the stipend to be there. And this is where you can have different ideas. And like in case of Ayahuasca Festival in Western Australia, they pay you good money to stay for a couple of months in Western Australia and work with local inhabitants in a small place. This was a 5,000 people place. A film about this place called Narragen is on show in the gallery now, so when you come to the opening or afterwards you can see the film. It's a 1-hour documentary about the place. Basically, this is where we learned how to deal with local context. So we are being like a parachuted person put into a new context. You have to have a local agent to open doors for you, and you start asking questions and you start learning how little you know as an architect, because apart from loving modernist architecture, we are also put in the shoes of a modernist architect who's usually imposing a position without having much knowledge on what really people are and what are their expectations and how do they live. We don't get this sort of tools as architects. The mainstream architectural schools are not offering this sort of preparation. Probably psychologists, social scientist students, whatever, but not us. For now, I know only one school that's preparing for this. This is New School in New York. And now also I know that Harvard started a program like this. But this is not something that we know. So we've been actually forced to learn this, and we learned by doing. The first project was related to revitalization of an old train station in Narrogin, a 5,000 people place in Western Australia. This was a railway hub that was actually forgotten after privatization of the railways in the 80s. So the city that actually grew on the railway stopped making any sense. It was original administrative center, but you could feel that actually the heart of the city was there, and it was a forgotten train station. So we decided to put some attraction there on the very flat land of Western Australia, to give people the opportunity to go up into a viewing tower that's covered with polyester hair. This is a sample that we built, and this is a robot that we built that was reacting to people coming. We work with Arduino, so like with different programming tools, so we can do all kind of things. And this would be reacting to cars and people passing through the railway zone, reacting in a way like an animal that shivers and attracts attention, or is afraid, or wants to scare someone. This way, an interaction would start between the users of the space, who would also be attracted by the fact that there's a strange structure moving, and therefore this zone would come back to life. For now, it's a dead zone. And this is when we also learned how much local democracy is related to local game of interests of different parties. After 1 year of doing a project with local engineers, the project was stopped because the 9 people board of the city it had to be unanimous to give us the green light to apply for local and federal money. And 2 of the people were against it because they had some different idea or business or whatever. So the project went on hold. But a very nice film for Canon Plus TV was produced, and I do invite you to see it. Well, this is the sample. It was also nicely shivering. Another leitmotif is water. We work a lot with the political part of water. I don't know if you know Eyal Weizmann's book, Hollow Land and Civilian Occupation. Did you read it? Any of you? Okay. Eyal Weizmann is teaching in Goldsmiths in London, and he is an ex-student of Bezalel School of Architecture in Jerusalem, where I also have every some time the pleasure of teaching. And along with Rafi Segal, he started a project of gathering data from their friends, from their faculty, on how actually Israel is shaped through a militaristic operation of building new architecture in places that are actually forbidden for the Israel to be built on according to the Oslo Treaty. Did you ever hear about Oslo Treaty? No? Okay, a bit of history. Okay, so there's a treaty between Palestinians, there is now Palestinian autonomy, that is actually freshly a country. So you have Palestinian embassies at last. And Israel, which is a nice modernist project that is basically 70-year-old. And the treaty divides the space with a set of buffer zones in which no buildings can be built. But Israel is breaking it, using money from donors, usually from US, being owners of such entities as Starbucks, for instance, and building illegal settlements. Did you hear about illegal settlements? So this is where the Brooklyn Orthodox Jews are coming with Kalashnikov guns, and they stay there. And then every some time there's some new scandals appearing and so on. So A.L. Weitman started to gather this information, and then he started to gather information about the water infrastructure, because actually the water from below Palestinian autonomy is being sucked, drained away to water south of Israel, especially Beersheba and kibbutzim that are in the south. You know what kibbutz is? Yeah, good. There's a big exhibition on kibbutzim in MoMA. It was a year ago. There's a catalog of it. Please take a look. So what happened was that in some moment Palestinians understood why they lost in Oslo the basic PowerPoint, which would be the one of controlling the air, which is airlines, whatever, and earth. They cannot dig a hole in the earth without asking Israeli military administration. Why? Because this is where the drains are, and the drains are getting their water from eastern Jerusalem, where the heavy raining happens in November, October, and so on. And so when you go to Palestinian autonomy, you realize they have no rivers, no lakes, no stream, no live running water. And they have only 3 wells in a city of Ramallah, which is the capital. So we've done a fake stream. The stream is purely architectural. There's an underground cistern. So with the simple fact of being low placed underground, it keeps low temperature. And there's a movement capture, so when people sit down on a bench, the water with low temperature starts to flush their feet exactly here along the sensors that we all have on our feet. Do you have feet? Yeah, so when you touch feet, like, you know these fantastic moments when you touch your feet in the morning? So you have these sensors along the feet. So this is a moment where you actually feel pleasure or lack of pleasure. So the place was supposed to start a park, because you have to know that public spaces and parks is also something very new in Palestine. You have lots of Palestinian patriots coming back, mostly women, because most educated people in Palestine are women, who start extra-governmental organizations using very good knowledge of how to get different money from all over the world, starting with Norwegian funds, EU funds, German remorse funds, any funds, and creating new infrastructure there. So Rewak, which is a foundation from Ramallah, decided to revitalize an entire old town of a university city called Birzeit, and wanted to build the first park there. And this was the beginning of the park. The idea is very simple, again, so the water is flushing, and people are just simply gathering because there's water, no matter what their religion is. This predominantly was a place where Greek Orthodox were living. You have to remember that 40% of the population of Palestinian autonomy are not Muslims, they are Christian. Mostly Greek Orthodox. So when you think about how NBC is showing Palestinian autonomy or whatever, is usually a guy with a Kalashnikov, shooting each other and so on. This is not true. This is NBC. If you want to see Palestinian autonomy, go to Al Jazeera TV. It's a different reality. Or Chinese Global TV. So the funny thing was that on the opening, when I asked, there were like 40 people coming, different curators and so on. So I asked who wants to sit with me on the bench. And what was characteristic? The only people to take off their shoes and try it were women. And this is the future of Palestine. The entire title started also as a funny thing, and this is why Polish Ministry of Foreign Affairs has given us money, is that there is this American water from state of Maine, from a small place called Poland. It's called Poland Spring. It has absolutely nothing to do with my beautiful country. And so what happens was that I was desperate because I went for 3 months to Palestinian autonomy asking people. I had other projects in Israel, so I was passing through Control Point and asking people in Ramallah and Birzeit, like, what do you know about public space? How would you use it and so on? It was too abstract. In Arabic tradition, and you have to remember most of Arabic world never had any industrial revolution, and public spaces that we know today are effect of industrial revolution. So the only places they know is basically the mosque and the souk, the bazaar. I was desperate. In some moment, I realized none of them was actually able to respond to it, except for the ladies who came back from Cooper Union, Harvard, and so on. So in some moment, I started asking like this desperate question, like, okay, so what do you know about my country? And in most cases, I realized that Palestinians, just the same thing as Poles in the 70s and 80s, that they were washing dishes in New Jersey. Tons of people were immigrating to US, which I didn't know, and their only idea of Poland is the mineral water that they were, that was stacked when they were washing the dishes. So I said, okay, fantastic. So my country is about freshness, mineral water, natural things. And this is what Polish Ministry of Foreign Affairs likes so much. And then we went on the other side of the frontier. This is Bat Yam, far outskirts of, in Israeli terms, it's a small country. It's just 25 minutes from the downtown of Tel Aviv. This is a place predominantly inhabited by Russians, Russian aliyah, or wave of immigration from Gorbachev time, so like 80s. And this is a place where people were actually shocked. Mostly people with very strong European or North European idea on how to use water. Because in 2010, suddenly the government, because of shortages of water, has forbidden the use of water for private gardens. So you could not water your garden anymore. And for people, this was like limiting democratic freedom. Because if you would do it, a police guy would come and give you a fine. So what we wanted to say is to say, look guys, you actually have water. And the water is in the Mediterranean. The problem is that Israel, as a Zionist, do you know what Zionism is? Good. Okay, so make a research. Zionism, very interesting concept. So the Zionist project was about going to Israel and getting the land. So there's this a military song about the man who goes out from the sea and overtakes the land. Okay, the effect of it was a set of atrocities and fights with Arabs, Palestinians, and so on. But anyway, the sea is forgotten because if you look towards the sea, it's like a traitory. It's as if you were saying, I want to go back to Europe. But we were saying, like, maybe you should look at the sea because this is a source of water. And the simple thing is, when you think about it, that the pressure of seawater is so big that the water is being pressed up till the dunes along the beach of Bat Yam. And on the level of -2 meters, you get a good semi-clean water that was cleaned up by a simple filter, being the sand. And you can pump it up, move it to a water tower, and then redistribute it to mackerel cones that, with help of UV, being the sun, purify the water, and you can transmit it to the greenery, to plants. We use the first-line plants, Australian species that grow very fast on sand, and in 3 days we had this. But to maintain this new life and to start the garden on the dunes, you had to have fun on the seesaw. This is a seesaw that works with the pump that we actually stolen from a military magazine. And so when kids were playing on it, they were pumping the water to this water tower that had a hole on top, so it was fantastically ejaculating when you were like really pressing it very strong. This is the very principle of interactive installations. If you want interaction to happen, you need to give direct input. Without direct input, people won't be ever attracted by anything. So it has to ejaculate. Without ejaculation, no fun. So this was what was happening. So people started to very aggressively have fun some of them were totally ignoring the fact that this was actually serving for this space to survive. This is why the name Tamaguchi Park. In the 90s, there was this funny Japanese toy. It was an electronic small device in which you could have a small beast, and if you would knock on it a lot, the beast would survive. If not, then would die. So this is an artificial being. And but the interesting thing was that us as architects, we were invited by the municipality of Bat Yam, and actually there's another thing, Tadeusz can tell you. There's a fantastic mayor's office in Bat Yam designed by a set of architects, one of them being a Polish-Jewish architect. Check out mayor's office Bat Yam. It's the most crazy building I've ever seen. And so what happened was that the mayor asked us to actually start the entire program of teaching kids how to desalinate water, because this is the desalination process. So we made this program. They've offered us 11 volunteers who were doing their military service, and I mean working for the municipality instead of being in the military. And so we started a program that took 2,000 kids from primary schools. And because it's a Russian tradition, you know, they're into pioneers and all this. They're very like Russians. They, you know. So basically, we had these young guys who were speaking Russian with them, and we called them urban achievers, and they were receiving specially designed T-shirts if they were teaching other kids. And on the opening night, so this is a typical military volunteer, and this is the urban achiever, and this is a typical architect. So we were having fun, and then these kids were teaching other kids. So this is when we've become sort of educators also. This is an installation that started as a concept, and then river went up because the Vistula River is fluctuating up to 5 meters per year, which is pretty dangerous and uncontrollable. The idea was very simple, is to actually make people believe and understand that they have an input on the quality of water. Vistula is probably one of these taboo spaces in Europe. You remember like medieval gravure showing different like beasts living in like Leviathan and beasts like this. So this is what people believe that lives in waters of Vistula. So if you touch the water, the beast just bites off your finger. It's so polluted, mostly agriculture and industry. So we wanted to say like, but hey, you can actually change it if you cooperate. So because Vistula is also a fantastic river port, a new boulevard is being built. People are running in their newest Nikes. You know, we're a very sporty nation now. I mean, it's been like maybe already 5 years. So less middle-aged people are dying of heart diseases because everybody's running now. So they all pretending it's Miami or Barcelona, but they never touch the water because, you know, the beast is there. So we want to say, okay, so like, if you're so much into fitness, why don't you just do some treadmill or bicycle, whatever, and then you pump up the water. It goes to filters, water, carbon, UV filter, inverted osmosis one, so it's like 4 of them, and then you get fresh drinkable water. You can see poo actually floating here, yeah? And so you can have your cup and drink it and see the poo floating, and this is the same water after 5 minutes of your effort as a citizen. It never happened. But what happened was that actually a year later, so this is the structure, there's a water turbine that's also helping a lot because there's 5 kilometers string going on. And 1 year later we were called by a foundation from Puebla, Mexico, and we are building a smaller version with 3 bicycles in Puebla. And they have precisely the same problem. The politicians are never spending money on anything that's not sexy and not helping them to win next elections. So, and purifying water is not so sexy, yeah? So, we were asked by the foundation to actually provoke a discourse on this subject because through Puebla there are 2 main rivers passing, and both of them look far worse than Vistula River. So hopefully we're going to have it finished soon. Another leitmotif, also related to what you saw and what I already mentioned, is the public space. This is Also, one of the times when we've been asked to be programmers, the Ochel, which is tent in Hebrew, is a temporary pavilion for the Museum of Polish Jews that we won as in a competition. And this represents what the Jewish Museum in Warsaw is today, because it was replaced by the final museum won by Rainer Malamaki, a Finnish architect. And we wanted to make a model of the future museum, knowing how it's going to look, because the competition was already won. And so we proposed, this is how the building actually looks. This is the offices, exhibition, and so on. But this is the emptiness in the building. And we made this emptiness the leitmotif, the public space precisely. And then we were asked, why don't you put some life into it? So we helped the education department in organizing workshops. We didn't organize Hanukkah parties, but concerts and so on and so on. And this took 3 years. So during 3 years, we learned how to do even better programming. Coming back to Palestine, I was asked by the Polish representative in Ramallah to provide something in like a micro-expo place. You know Aaron Betsky? Okay, Aaron Betsky, 2A. So Aaron Betsky had this fantastic book called Sex in Architecture. He's gay, so probably this is also important for him. But like Aaron claims, and we started a festival together and we deal on many projects together, and he claims that in contemporary architecture, starting from the modernism, you can see very strong division between projections of genders. So, like, ostentatious obsession of private sector with skyscrapers is an obvious erection-related thing, and the new approach towards horizontal landscape-related objects is a feminine aspect. So, the Garden of Nations that was freshly built by Norwegian landscape architects in the downtown of Ramallah is visibly a projection of male thing, because China, Korea, Brazil, and new democracies that are very aggressive and want to show up are building in all kind of sculptures and strange objects that are supposed to attract more attention. So it's like a fight for attention there. I decided to do something that will be purely functional, and it's just a pergola. And because the access to high tech is none there, so we made a perversion. We've designed the form using rhino and grasshopper, and then we translated this using all these very detailed drawings into handwork. That's almost like medieval attention to detail. Now this is what happened. So this is basically a motif from Polish Christmas tree decorations that was just repeated 200 times. And this is a place that was also supposed to not only give shadow in different moments, but also is related to the fact that people are learning how to use public spaces. So they treat public spaces like probably French bourgeoisie would use the stairs of the Grand Opera in Paris. So they just show up. They don't know that actually public spaces are also about relaxing, maybe kissing even, or reading. No, they are always on the stage there. When they come with families, they make picnics, and they show up to each other that they are here, they're using this place. So we wanted to say, hey, but you can be like semi-controlled, but you can also like sit aside and read the book and maybe even kiss again. Another leitmotif, living. Kenneth House, I won't bore you with this. I mean, it's very narrow, so let's not go into it too much. But it's a gap between buildings. There's just 2 blocks from the place where I lived, and it's by a street crossing where Chłodna 25, one of the most prominent culture bars in Warsaw, was placed. And because this is the border between city center and Wola district, which is precisely the end of big ghetto and the small ghetto. It's the verge between. Have you seen the Pianist? The Polanski's film?
Yes.
So there's a footbridge. So this is where the footbridge was. There. And so what happens is that this is a place that's full of very strange energy. First of all, because there's a fight between different historical periods. This is a pre-war building, a Jewish tenement building, and this is the width of the street and of the side of the street, the sidewalk. This is 60s and 70s. This is a military cooperative building. And so this is the ambition of the designers of this time, how Warsaw should look. So the sidewalk was supposed to give an effect that was like much more ambitious, much bigger, much more proud. And of course, I don't have to tell you that the pre-war Jewish tenement building would be considered as a remnant of a vicious capitalism. In between these buildings, suddenly, when walking the street, on the other side of the street, I was walking to the bar, and according to the theory of extremely rare events, do you know the theory? The theory of extremely rare events. Check it out. It's very interesting, and it's going to influence your life when you read it. The theory goes very simple. It says, the biggest changes, most crucial changes in the vector of your life, like meeting a guy you want to marry, or getting the best job, are usually related to a strange coincidence that breaks the routine. Of course, lots of evolution of human being takes place in the routine, day-by-day work, but suddenly strange things happen, and this is when we go into the new turn and something very interesting happens. Most people are afraid when they realize till what extent it's going to change their life, but some are not. And this was my case. I turned my head left, and I saw the gap. And I thought like, wow, why this building is not touching this building? And it's very simple. Because most modernist architects were not able to respond to the past. Most Warsaw is designed as if this was Brasilia. It's very simple to think in terms of tabula rasa, of erased, empty space in which we just put poor objects. So this was their problem. They didn't know how to enter in discourse. And the effect was this. The inhabitants of this building were using this as a trash place. So I said, okay, let's put life there. What can we put? Hamsters? No, hamsters are not sexy enough. Let's put people. But how many people? Maybe one person would be enough. And then I was on residency in Schloss Solitude. It's a very interesting, check it out, Schloss Solitude in Stuttgart. It's a very nice artist in residency center. That's actually the first time I was making money on being an artist in this life. This is when the German government makes you live well. And I was speaking with a Polish writer who was on residency there too, and he said, look, as a writer, I always had this problem when being on residency here, because this is such a nice chateau that's put on top of a hill surrounded by a park, and it's a great place to write, but you don't get any stimuli. So you have to go to big cities, live things, go through all the dynamics of a big city, and come back to write. And this is the duality of a work of a writer. So straight away I started thinking maybe this should be a place for a writer, because this is by a very lively street called Żelazna, and to get there you have to pass through this door, going through backyards of all kinds and parking lots, and it takes like 10 minutes to get there. And then you can hide yourself in a niche in this nice 18th century tradition that many aristocrats were into, which were so-called temples of thinking, where when a bored or tired aristocratic woman or a man could retire and write a memoir or whatever. Artists in residency centers are also sort of a privilege, because this is where you go there without your family, you stay there, and you just create, and nobody's bothering you. It's like, I'm sorry, in architecture you don't get this sort of luxury. It's just the telephone is ringing all the time. So in artists in residency center, you're supposed to just relax and have your thoughts going out. So we said, okay, let's do this sort of a duality-related place. Let's have one person using it. But who should that be? And then I started thinking about an interview I read a couple of years before with Edgar Keret, whose short stories I like very much, when he said that his mother was born just a couple of blocks from this place, and he is very much admired in Poland. His sense of humor is very Polish. And so I said, okay, why don't I simply call Edgar Keret and ask him, do you want a house in Warsaw? So again, as an architect, instead of waiting for a client to come to me, I started what is nicely called in architecture a self-inflicted project. I started this, yeah? So I went to a foundation and I said, guys, I want to build this crazy, very strange thing. And they said, whoa, let's go for it, let's get money for it. And so the entire machine started to work. The extra-governmental organizations are very strong in Poland, and they have access to good money. So lots of crazy things are possible. But this crazy thing took me 3 years of fundraising and getting through horrifying Warsaw bureaucracy. I don't have to tell you this is officially not a building. It's an artist installation. Officially, it's not like this. Temporary artist installation with a possibility of use up to 4 hours per day. And it's fantastic because it's actually a city lawyer that told me how to do it. I went to the architectural, municipal architecture office, and to the head of it, and I said, look, I have this idea. Can you help me with that? And they said, fantastic, but it's undoable according to Polish and any European building codes. And I said, okay, so what can we do? And he said, I'm going to call my lawyer. And there's a lawyer coming up, taking out a cigarette and saying, okay, it has to be a temporary, and so all this. So I've applied to them, and they've given themselves a permit. Of course, there is no inspector checking out if it's only working 4 hours per day. Temporary in Polish building code is not very clearly defined. Temporary could be 20 years. Artist installation, it's even worse. So no one knows what it is. This way, we hope it's going to last forever. And because this was the cheapest billboard of the city of Warsaw. This came out exactly the year of Euro Championships. And according to PR agency that represented us and made all this fuss around it, we had similar visibility as Euro Championships, with just 350,000 zloty instead of 2 billion zloty spent on national stadium. So you can see that sometimes a strange thing can actually produce a very strong effect. The entire problem was also how to actually make it livable, functional. It's not a sculpture. We want the person to feel well there and not get claustrophobic. I spent many nights having real problems with it. God, I'm putting some poor people to live into this. I'm such a bad person. But then I realized that actually it's not so bad. And I've met tons of designers outside of architectural. Do you know Neufeld? It's the most influential architect on earth. He tells us how to roll the socks and how much a goat takes place. Yeah? So we're just in this mindset because it's also in our building codes and everywhere. But then I started meeting designers who are designing yachts, cars, and so on. They were saying no problem. You put 5 people there. So I was okay, let's go for it. So this is when I realized that of course, there's a bunch of problems like this eating space. This is the table. This is 2 seats. This is maybe not the most comfortable place on earth, but you can eat your daily breakfast there. The only problem is that one of the elbows is nicely posed by the table, as we tend to do, but the other one is falling because there's no space. But otherwise, the person wouldn't be able to pass. And this is what I needed for the people to go to the next room, being the kitchenette. But actually, the kitchenette is very small. But in New York terms, and I live in New York a lot now, it's a normal thing. It's like a normal kitchen. And then you go to a toilet that's the size of an aircraft toilet. So if you travel a lot with an airplane, it's a normal thing. The only difference is you can take shower there. No, in a plane it's not possible. But so then the next problem was actually how to go through functions. Aligning functions here was not very difficult. But then this is the day zone. So this is 122 centimeters, like there. And here it's 762, because it's a trapezoid plot. So how to enter? We cannot squeeze any doors, so we decided to go for a trap door. So you climb up through an open door, you close it, and then you can use the space. It's not very practical, but it works. And then how to give people the sense of space? The only possibility was to go vertical and to get as much studio light, the reflected light, as possible, that is reflected by light surfaces, only with spots of color. So you get this studio effect that's very nice for your skin because it's slightly like pinkish, so you don't need any makeup. It makes it look good always. There was a set of technological problems. The first one was that there are city pipes, the city heating pipes going under in this very gap. So we had to negotiate for about a year with a city heating company on actually having first the permit of building on pipes. Remember, as a practicing architects, one day you're going to see this is the most holy thing on earth. It's the pipes. If you put anything on pipes, it's a sin. You cannot do things like this. So imagine these very straightforward, practical guys, hardcore engineers sitting in their office, and there's another pseudo engineer because we're not really engineers or architects. So I'm coming in, pretending I'm an artist, like doing my hair look strange and so on, and I'm saying like, look, I want to put this strange structure on your pipes, and it's like, are you crazy? Like, God. So it took us a couple of months to go from, oh God, to maybe, and then go to the next step, which was us asking how much. And so the first price was 30% of the budget we had. So it was like, oh God, it's like killing the project. We cannot spend this much money for replacing the pipes and like building some structure around it and so on. So we've been negotiating, because the first idea was actually to put, there's two pipes. Yeah? So the idea was to put one above the other, which, it's a difficult thing because you need to put these triangulating elements at the end. And we wanted to have thicker walls inside, like a tunnel-like structure. You can see here. Yeah, so the pipe is here, and this is the structure. Yeah. And so my structural engineer was insistent on saying, no, we need 22 centimeters here. Yeah. And so it was making the one pipe go above the other. And then I was so desperate that on one of the meetings with the engineers from the city heating company, I said like, okay, why don't we just go back from 30% of our budget by having pipes like this and go like this? And they said, yes, okay. And I said, okay, how much it's going to cost instead of 30% of the budget? And they said, 2,000 euro. It's like, wow. So suddenly we went like 30 times lower in one pace of time. So this is when I realized I asked the right question. I said like, huh? And they said, yeah! So like suddenly things were possible. And this is what happens in life. In many cases during vital projects and very dramatic moments, you realize that just one thing is switching a thing from impossible to possible. And of course, as we say in Polish, we raped our structural engineer, and he said, okay, 18 centimeters, and then so on. And this is how it was possible. It went too fast. This is Edgar in his studio. You have to write down certain document before using it, because otherwise you just fall down when you're drunk, so you cannot drink there. And it's a long way down, from a mezzanine on which you sleep, and you can actually roll down on the stairs. This is the other way around. So this is the place where you can read. There's a small ventilation window that enables cross ventilation for the place. You can put magnets there. It's just fantastic. And then you can also climb it up like Spider-Man because you have this structure there. So altogether, it's pretty fun an object. So what happened was that just after we started the artist in residency program, and we got money from the city of Warsaw, and we have people staying there for periods from 2 to 6 weeks. So, and they're not getting crazy. Only one person maybe. But Edgar did it. He liked it. And this is him in his bed with IKEA bed sheets. And this is the workplace here with some family paraphernalia. And this is the next building that we did last year, which is another phenomenon, because this is when we understood that if you want to make an experiment, you need to have lots of allies and friends to endorse you. If you are just one freaky architect saying like, I want to do this strange thing, it's a fuck up. You need lots of people to help you. So, in this case, I was addressed by a rich young lawyer, guy my age at the time. I was young too, yeah? So he comes to me and says like, look, I have 4 kids. I bought this extremely expensive lot in one of the garden cities from 30s that surround Warsaw. You know garden cities tradition? No?
We know garden cities around Warsaw.
You know garden cities?
Yes.
This is Podkova, so it's one. Yeah, this is the Podkova Leśna, the eldest one. So what you get there now is just the wealthy people living there. What you pay for is actually the trees. Old trees that are there that were planted in 20s. So what happens is the guy says like, look, I love these trees. I paid loads of money for the trees and I don't want to chop them out. As a normal architect, what do? You go with your client, you take a plan, and you just say, let's erase a rectangle, and we put another rectangle into it. Instead of this, I said, okay, let's use a very simple mechanism of 2-dimensional Voronoi. Do you know Voronoi? No? Okay. Voronoi scheme. Google it. Russian geometer, 1926 was the first time he came out with the idea of geometrically describing the foam. Okay, in 3D. And then he went into 2D, and the 2D was used here. So the idea was how to actually put the house between the trees. And we did it like this. The black points are the trees. I'm not going to explain you Voronoi. It's very simple. Go check it out. A bunch of buildings were built according to this scheme. It's very, very simple. And it really enables the trees to stay there. Only one condition has to be kept. The roots. The roots have to grow under the house. So if you have any cellars, anything that's underground, it has to be far away from the roots. This way, the house is floating in the air like a UFO, and you can have your trees coming very close to the facade. Okay, so to describe it very fast, so this is where you enter. This is a garage platform. This is the garage itself. You enter into the hallway. This is the set of rectangular rooms. This is an outdoor loggia room. All of it practically very rectangular. The only problem is when you put it all together, there's one non-rectangular effect, which is a triangular eating space, the dining room. So we had to design a very special table for it. But otherwise, it's okay. You can put your two people bed into it. So the space is pretty freaky because this is also a space of a forest. So as you probably know, as students, in this part of the world, 4 times more light comes vertically through the roof than going through the window. And because we are morons, we don't use it so much. Only maybe in the factories or big public functions, but not in the houses. So please do use it. It's much better light, it's reflected, it's not aggressive, and you have it much longer during the day. So we had 2 sources of light. The regular windows were actually for, like in this case, this is one of the patios with a tree growing through it, another patio with a tree. Some windows were actually used to have frames for nice view of some specific trunk. This was the fun of it. We could actually virtually put windows into space, negotiate it with functions, and have things designed from the inside. And then there's lots of mirrors that are creating lots of illusions, and a triangular or polygonal table. Then the money was so high that I decided to invite a number of designers. One of them designed the table. There was a Polish artist living in Mexico, Małgorzatą, who designed this incredibly aggressive optical orgasm that was meant to hide the sliding door. So it hides nicely inside, and when moving out it's almost invisible, which cuts the house into two parts, because as you can see, there's a one long sequence here that divides the day zone from the night zone. And this is where the sliding door is. This is the day, the saloon place with a chimney and so on, all the bourgeois things. This was also a great possibility of using very different materials. This is mecate, there's a polyester line that we were using a lot here for all kind of elements. This is the very strange table. That's actually, this is the cut in it. So this is the position when you can put it, make it rectangular. This is actually a nice answer to a brief. So the guy told us, look, normally there's 6 of us by the table, but during Christmas there's 20 of us. Please give us a table. So like, it's 200% more people suddenly sitting in. So the table can get converted with a set of magnets into something much bigger. And this is the last project about the living leitmotif. Because the experiments in many cases are not so well paid, and like the house previously shown was something that fed me for 3 years, but lots of experiments are something that you actually starve with instead of surviving. So thanks God I was asked by a building company that built Podkova House to come up with an idea of prefabricated houses that could be have very good energetic qualities, that could be easy to build and easy to assemble and fast, could be cheap, so below let's say 800 euro per square meter, and all kind of technologies could be applied to it, and it could evolve with the family. So different modules could be added. We started with 58, 75, and 92 square meters as a base. So we also have three angles of roofing. This one is just for putting the installations in the roof. This one is already, this is 15, this is 30, provides space for storage, and this one already gives space for extra functions. And then, because the new law came out, and there's worker gardens in Poland. Do you know worker allotment gardens? You know, like working class people, 300 square meter or 150 square meter places where they grow their tomatoes, old people, railway line, and there's these small allotments. You have it in Czech Republic? Yeah, so in Poland, you can live on this. The law just changed, and people can actually sleep there. Up till the January of this year, they were not able. And suddenly, you realize there's plenty of people who want to live on the smaller allotments because they are, in many cases, in the hearts of big cities. So if you buy yourself a 25 or 35 square meter house, because you can build without building permit up to 35 square meters according to new Polish law, you can have a nice one-bedroom house on which you can nicely live. So this is how we started the new product. And these are the first houses built, one in an affluent place in Konstancin, one of the most expensive places in Poland. This is in Lublin, in eastern Poland. And this is in Opacz, also in the outskirts of Warsaw. Different typologies, as you can see, 3 of them with 45-degree roof. So suddenly something that's quite minimalistic. The idea was to produce very minimalistic details and something that will be very natural and simple. You have to know that in Poland in the 90s, what happened was a total orgasm of forms and colors and cheap German building technologies. Like horrible colors on facade, like pistache pink. You know Miami Vice? So this was Miami Vice period in Poland, like, you know, and flamingos. And so when you go through Polish outskirts, it's a nightmare. And there's almost no urban control. So houses go in all directions. It's probably the best expression of like crazy freedom. So it's not that we are fascists, but we said like, hey, maybe just come down a bit and produce something that's going to be slightly more simple. And we hope we're going to populate Poland with it. So for now, last year we sold 10, and we hope more people will have this, and we're going to change the landscape of our beautiful country. Thank you very much.